Hi folks, it's Darren here. Here's this little Berberis that I've been developing from scratch on the channel. This little tree struggled in 2022 because of that super hot weather, and I think I went 1 year past it needing a repot. Lost a couple of branches last year. The branches it had didn't extend. Some of them died back. In spring of 2023, I repotted this tree. And through the year, I kept it in a more shaded location, even though we had a cooler summer. And it's done really well, actually. It's done so much better. We've got tons of buds all over the branches. They're thick, fat, ready to go in the spring. So I'm confident to come in and do some pruning now. And straight away, I can see a couple of dead twigs. Sometimes with these Berberis, it's hard to tell the difference between the dead and alive. Because of the striations that the bark of these develop, even when they're alive, you can't really tell by just looking at the wrinkliness. Even the colour sometimes is a bit deceiving. This is very grey, and there you go, it's extremely brittle, so I know that that's dead at least. I wonder how far the deadness goes back. Those buds look okay, so even though I'm not sure that's alive, I might just leave it be. And here's another one that died, this branch here. I think what might have happened with this one is I bent it a little bit too far, it snapped, and then with some of the stress, it has actually died. So I can see straight away that this part of that branch is dead. I'm pretty sure that the whole branch is dead. Sometimes you can be pruning off live branches without realising. There's another couple of dead twigs here. Let's just, in fact, I don't know that that's dead. Yeah, this is a prime example. You probably can't see very well, but there's a bud on, I would have sworn that this twig is dead, but there's a bud there that looks very much alive, so I'll just cut back to that bud. At least some of that branch was definitely dead. I know that for a fact. The buds on the dead bits tend to look sort of very shriveled, whereas the live bits are very, very plump and nicely coloured. That's also not alive. That's dead. Yeah. So we've still got a knuckle here, but in its current guise, in this iteration, there's no getting away from that swelling that's there. I mean, I could carve into it, but there is also a case for cutting this whole section off and growing a really much smaller tree, like a mame size, cutting this right back or what have you. That's not what I'm going to do today, though. I'm going to enjoy the tree in its current guise for a bit longer before we make any drastic changes to its design, I think. But let me know what you reckon for the future. Is that dead? Yeah, there's another little dead section there. Oh, ow! That reminds me, these guys have the most evil thorns. The thorns are really, really fine, and they're guaranteed to give you a splinter, and they also, I don't know why, but they are also guaranteed to get infected, 100%. Every single time they've snagged me, I've ended up with an infection, so might also declaw it. Let's get to pruning then. I am going to work from the bottom branch through up the tree and cut back to twos. Try to sort of figure out where I kind of want the silhouette to go, and just get snipping. So if we start on this branch, I'll come out here. This section here had some dieback. There's quite a number of buds in this cluster. Scratch some of the buds that I definitely won't need to use. Ones that are facing in directions that I don't necessarily need a branch to grow in. That was going backwards. There's two next to this stub I'll leave those two. There's a couple facing upwards, and there's one on the end of that branch. There's a bud facing backwards here. I don't need that backwards bud. Here, there's two nice buds there. That's good. A couple of buds in the crotch here. Definitely don't need those crotch buds. I'll try and stop these knuckles from forming if I can. There's a bud on the end of this side shoot and a bud underneath, so I'm going to cut these two upward facing buds off. They're quite close into the crotch, so get rid of those. And then coming up here, we've got a bud at the end there. Don't need that one that's in the sort of shoulder. That's just going to look awkward if it grows and thickens. There's a bud facing me that you can't quite see, a bud facing the inside, so I'll scratch off that inside one. It's a slightly weaker bud. Then we've got two facing upwards. My instinct is to remove one of these two. I'm not confident that I can remove one without damaging the other, so I will leave that for the time being. Here there's a bud right in close. Don't want to encourage a knuckle to form, so I'll rub that one off. Then we've got a bud there and a bud just here. Now coming up this branch, there's a dead stub that I missed. Another bud on the sort of the crotch or the armpit of that piece. Cut that stub back a bit more flush. And I go a bit higher with this branch, so leave 3 buds rather than 2. Here we've got a little branch that's growing back in towards the tree, but it's not causing any structural issues at the moment. All of these buds in the crotches, I want to get rid of them, otherwise you end up with swollen knuckles just like that trunk area. Being a shrub, these are very prone to sort of this sort of basal growth pattern and buds forming at the knuckles rather than at the tips, so I want to keep on top of those. So we've got one bud there, and so I'll prune back. Having pruned, I'll just come and snip off any needles that I can see, take those claws off. I'll do the pruning of each branch first, then I'll remove the needles, so that I don't spend ages pruning off needles from branches that I'm just going to remove anyway. And this section here is dead, so I'll cut back to that live bud. So I'm now going to work my way up this back branch. Let's just turn it around so you can see there's this branch in here. Oh no, that is the one that I think I broke. Bye bye. So we've got this vertical branch up here. This is a really nice strong piece now. So we have got a bud right by the crotch here, and then it's a good at least 1.5 centimeters till the next bud. So I'm not going to cut back to these two buds here, 1, 2. I'm going to cut back to that first one and let this bud grow and see if we get a shorter internode. The internode is the space between each bud. The bud is the node, the space between is the internode, and this one here is quite long. So I'll just cut back to 1 and the crotch bud and see what that gives me. Again, this is a very long node. I am going to cut back to 2 on this one. Let's see what that does. It'll be interesting to compare. Let's turn it around so you can see. So this one I cut back to 1 and the bud at the base. This one I've cut back to 2 and I've left a bud at the base. Let's see the difference between how those grow in the spring. That'll be interesting to see. I probably won't remember, but worth a little experiment. Now I'm looking, we've got nice internode length here. It might be that I want to cut that back shorter at some stage, but for the time being I'm going to cut back to my 2s. I'll just stick to this pattern until I can see the silhouette a bit better. I've got a really nice, beautiful fine piece down here. Cut back to 2 on that one. Take away that claw. And then we've got another couple of beautiful buds on this branch and some basal buds. Don't need those. Pretty fiddly to get rid of the thorn. That'll make it easier for me to get the bud away as well. I'm technically leaving 3. There's a bud there, and a bud there. If I want to, I can shorten back and just leave those 2 buds, or I can leave a bit of length. Reassess that when I've got a better, bigger picture view of the tree. I've cut this tip one back quite far, so I might not need this branch to be as long as it is, or this billow to be as wide as it is. But until I've got a bigger picture of the rest of the tree, I'm going to leave it. And it might be later on I can cut back to this one and this one maybe, or this one and this one, and just leave 2. Or it just depends on the length of the branch or the width of the silhouette that I'm aiming for. So now as I work my way up the trunk, we get to this branch here. So straight away there is a really nice, beautiful fine piece in here. So I'll cut it back to 2 buds and leave the ones at the base just in case I want to go shorter. Remove that bud. A couple of perished buds there, let's just knock those off. I quite like the idea of growing a branch here to disguise this bulge, so I won't remove any more buds from that area. Let's just see what it gives us. This internode is huge. The distance between that bud and that bud is pretty long. I think I might still leave the 2. Just because that branch was looking a bit weaker, I'll leave it with the extra buds. Oh, I've got a beautifully short internode on this one. Oh, that's beautiful. Absolutely spot on. Really happy with that. Previous pruning stub to clean up. Okay, we're onto the back branch now. Let's just swivel round. So we're on this one now. So we come up and we've got this sort of interior piece. We've got a group of 3 here. There's a piece that's growing towards the front, and in the front we've also got a piece growing towards the back. So I'm going to remove that forward growing piece and have this as a dedicated back branch. And there's also a bud there as well, so I can kill 2 birds with 1 stone. The internode length here is absolutely brilliant. Again, we've got a really nice internode length there. And that gives me a really nice length of branch overall as well. We've got 2 branches here, and we had buds. A knuckle has formed there. See, this section of branch is much thinner. I really just think with this species that's unavoidable. I mean, maybe I'm making excuses. They produce buds like fury, but they don't thicken like fury. So I just think there's just no getting away with it to some extent. In the future, I'll maybe, you know, replace that branch with something else more suitable, or maybe let a sacrifice branch go to thicken up that inverse taper. But right now, I don't think there's anything I can really do about it. I'm not convinced. Well, it's definitely not alive. It's dead. In fact, I think this... Ow! Good lord. That's an infection, guaranteed. This whole piece here, that whole thing's dead, which does me a favour because it was forming a group of 3. This back branch is getting a bit long, actually. But let's make that, again, let's make that decision later on. A couple of old pruning stubs. And then some needles. Needles to say I want to get rid of those. Yes, when I remove the needles, I'm not cutting them right back. I'm just taking as much of it off as I can. If I cut it back too far, I run the risk of damaging the bud that's next to it. So as long as I take that really sharp tip off, I should be okay. Oof, the needle I just cut off was a triple thread. It had 3 points. Dangerous. Okay, so that's that back branch looking pretty decent. Come out on this other secondary of it now. I don't know if you can see it, there's a bud in this, there's a crotch between these 2 branches and the bud right in there. I should really remove it, but because this is a straight boring section, I've half a mind to just leave that bud and see what it does. Really nice internode out on that shoot. Evil, evil needles on it, mind. Fine as a hair and sharp as anything. Cut that one back really short. It's not even visible from the front, so I'll just leave the 2 buds on that. Then we've got these really strong vertical pieces, a couple of the strongest branches on the tree at the moment. Start with the needles, just so I don't get stabbed. Bit of an old pruning stump. And then, so that's left 3 buds. Yeah, and then I leave, I can cut that back a bit better. There we go. Then we've got 2 on that one as well. Okay, that's looking grand. To save time, I didn't remove all the needles off these prunings. But now I need to be careful I don't rest my hand on a bed of thorns. Got a bud down there. It's not too close to the crotch. And the internode is pretty long, so I'll just cut back and leave sort of that one, and then one at the end. Take that leaf off, and a needle. There's a couple of buds on this at this junction, and then the branch comes off here and has 1 bud. I am actually going to cut back and leave those 2 buds rather than leaving 1 and the knuckle. Prune that one to leave 2, but it's more of a length consideration. Do I want it that high? Probably not, but let's decide that a bit later on. We've got 3 buds on this branch. Lengthwise, it's not the longest branch, so I'm wondering, do I want to leave 3? I'm going to leave 3 on this one because it's not a very long branch, and I'll cut back. There's technically 3 on this piece, so again, it's more of a length consideration. Old pruning wound, clean that up. Oh, cheeky little needle underneath there. Go on. And then there's 2 buds at the crotch there. They're in quite nice position, unlike that needle, which is ready to rip my thumb apart. Another needle, another needle. Oh, we're starting to get quite far out here, so I'm going to cut this one back without prejudice. Leaving 2 buds. And then again, we've got some buds there. I don't want a knuckle to form, but those buds are really nicely positioned. Now, do I really want this out this far? I don't know whether I do. Shall I just cut it back to 1? I mean, it's not technically 1. There is 1 at the base, but I don't really want to encourage these base buds to thicken the knuckles before the stem. That's the only thing. Right, I will leave 2, and I will come back, and when I can see the whole tree, let's reassess that. This guy is really quite long, but it's got some really nice movement. And I cut that back based on its length instead of the number of buds on this one, because with that movement, it might make a nicer replacement for this piece. So as you look at the front now, we're coming up to the apical region. There's some congestion in this area. It's not clear what to do here. Right, rub that bud off from underneath. That's always going to be weak. There's another one there, facing backwards. Don't need it to be facing backwards. There we go, cut back to 2 strong buds there. I don't know if that's a bit too close to this branch. This bud here might be just a bit too close, I don't know. We'll figure that out in a sec. We've got some buds here at the base of this shoot. We've got a bud there, pretty close, and then it's again, it's 1.5 centimeters to the next bud. That's too long, especially in the apex, so I'll cut that back quite hard. Ow! Oh god. Right, I'm going to leave this one quite long, reassess that one in a minute, and the same with that one. Deal with the needles while I'm having a little think about what to do in the upper area. There's a bud in there, don't need that bud. Really nice fine shoot in there. I won't prune that one off just yet. Then we've got this sort of, we've got more apical region up here. I'm not sure if we're getting too tall on this in this area now. Probably. Cut that one back reasonably hard. We've got a cluster of branches here. This branch coming forward, we've got this branch off that one but really close to the junction. We've got a branch coming slightly backwards and to the side, and then we've got this piece again forming part of the apex, and even a bud at the back here. The first thing is, do I even need that bud? No, if I keep that bud it's going to form a really, really ugly swelling. So I'm going to cut that back. And then, although this piece has got nice movement on its own, it's coming awkwardly down in front of the branch that it's coming off. It goes up towards us a bit, down and back across its own sort of trunk leader. So I am going to remove this one if I can. Right, I have to do it in 2 stages. It's just a little bit awkward. There we go. So that's much cleaner there. Like this piece. Don't want to remove this piece, that's really nice. So now we've still got 3/4 in this area. I'll tell you what I'm thinking. I'm wondering if this piece is kind of coarse. There's very few branches up here, and there's not a lot of nodes. It's kind of long section, branch, and this is pretty coarse. It's not too bad, I suppose, but you know, we're getting quite tall. Then we've got another like 2 centimeter stretch with no buds, no nodes, and then I'm wondering, do we cut this off and have these two? And this, you know, there's plenty of nodes on this piece, really nice and fine. This one's a bit more coarse, but it still has more nodes than what's there. But then that leaves us with kind of quite a big knuckle. So do I cut this? Do I cut this piece off back to here? And do I cut this piece off and have this as my current apical region? This will form a really beautiful, fine sort of apex / branch. I'm starting to wonder if that's the move. Right, come on, let's commit to this. So I'm definitely going to remove this guy. Cut back that one, leaving 2. Cut that one back. I've technically got 3 on here. Let's see what it gives us. Yeah, I'm happy with that. I think this piece is really obnoxious. Same with this. This is too long as well. Cut that back to 1. I can't do it. This is just too much, too tall. I'm gonna cut it back. There we go. There's a bud there on that one. There's a bud there on that one. It's gonna be like thick and chunky. Maybe we'll get, you know, something somewhere else that I can cut back to. Or do I remove it? I kind of think we need it there though. I think we need something there. I'm going to put a little dab of whatever the hell this stuff's called on that thicker cut on the apex, just to stop it drying out too quickly, and then I'm done. I'm happy with that. We'll see what this gives us in the spring and then reassess in the summer. The Nabari is coming on quite nicely. I repotted it this year, but I will show you the video of that later. So I'd be interested to know what you would do about this section with the thick inverse taper. So I'll see you next time. Keep growing.